I stood in the shadows of the grand ballroom watching Isabel parade around in my faded blue dress, the one she had desperately needed to borrow just hours ago. My fingers trembled against the cold champagne flute as Marcus, my fiancé in my previous life, slipped his arm around her waist. The scent of expensive cologne and betrayal mingled in the air as history threatened to repeat itself. Isn't she pathetic? The whisper cut through the classical music, landing directly in my ears, though they stood across the room. Familiar words, familiar pain. But this time, I knew exactly what would happen next. The crimson dress folded neatly in my car would soon change everything. My phone buzzed with a message from Isabel. "Thanks for the dress. Everyone says blue is always your color anyway. Maybe stick to the back of the room tonight? The investors are here." Her false sweetness made my stomach turn, but I smiled. The weight of the jade pendant against my chest, the one I'd recovered after my rebirth, reminded me that tonight would end differently. As I slipped away to change, the memory of my previous life's humiliation at this very gala burned bright. The champagne accidentally spilled on my dress, the whispers, the broken engagement announced while I sobbed in the bathroom. But in this timeline, I had already set my revenge in motion. The blue dress Isabel wore would be the least of her worries by midnight. I slid out through the service entrance, the cool night air a welcome relief from the suffocating tension inside. My car waited in the dimly lit parking lot just where I'd left it. With trembling fingers, not from fear but anticipation, I unzipped the garment bag in my trunk. The crimson fabric caught what little light existed, seeming to pulse with a life of its own. The dress had cost me 3 months' salary, but it would be worth every penny. Custom made from the finest silk, it hugged every curve while remaining tastefully elegant. In my previous life, I'd never dared to wear such a bold color, always hiding behind safe blues and grays. Colors that Isabel insisted suited my unremarkable features. In the car's tiny mirror, I applied the deep red lipstick that matched the dress perfectly. My hair, normally pulled back in a sensible bun, now cascaded in soft waves around my shoulders. The transformation wasn't just physical. Something in my eyes had changed too, a hardness, a knowledge that hadn't been there before my rebirth. 10 minutes. That's all it took to change from the meek May everyone expected into someone unrecognizable, someone powerful. The jade pendant, my mother's most treasured possession that had mysteriously disappeared after her death, completed the look. I'd found it hidden in Isabel's jewelry box the week after my rebirth, reclaiming it while my stepsister was out with Marcus. Walking back toward the glittering venue, I checked my watch. Right on schedule. The investors would be midway through their presentation now, with all eyes on the stage. The perfect moment for an entrance that would ensure no one forgot my name again. The security guard did a double take as I approached, his eyes widening slightly before he hurriedly opened the door. "Miss Zhao," he murmured, surprise evident in his voice. I smiled graciously, savoring this first small reaction. Music swelled from the ballroom as I paused at the entrance, taking one final deep breath. I thought of all the nights I'd cried myself to sleep after discovering Marcus and Isabel together. Of the pills I'd swallowed that final night, unable to bear the humiliation and betrayal any longer. Of waking up 17 again, with a second chance and the bitter knowledge of what was to come. The double doors swung open, and I stepped into the light. Monday morning at Zhao Investments brought a familiar chill as I entered the conference room. My stepsister Isabel sat at my father's right hand, presenting my market analysis as her own. The projector light illuminated her confident smile as my father nodded approvingly. The bitter coffee scalded my tongue as I maintained my pleasant expression, thinking of the encrypted files I'd already sent to our biggest competitor. "May, perhaps you could learn something from your sister's initiative, my father said, his voice cutting through the tension. The boardroom smelled of leather and ambition, with undercurrents of the jasmine perfume Isabel had stolen from my mother's collection after her death. My fingers methodically organized my notes while underneath the table, my foot tapped the rhythm of impatience. Marcus leaned against the glass wall, his expensive watch catching the light as he exchanged meaningful glances with Isabel. My former best friend Aria sat beside them, her laughter at their inside joke piercing my composure. The taste of betrayal was metallic on my tongue, but I simply smiled and offered to bring coffee refills. What none of them knew was that their cozy little world would begin crumbling in exactly 48 minutes. Behind the kitchenette door, I accessed the company server through my hidden backdoor program, transferring the actual data proving my work had been stolen. The cool metal of my laptop contrasted with my burning desire for justice as I forwarded everything to the board members' anonymous email accounts. By tomorrow, questions would arise that neither Isabel nor my father could answer. The coffee machine hissed and steamed, masking the sound of my accelerated breathing. The crimson dress incident at the gala 3 nights ago had been just the opening move. Isabel's humiliation when I walked in, the investor's eyes immediately drawn to me instead of her, had been sweet, but ultimately superficial. This was where the real game began. I arranged the coffee cups on a silver tray, adding exactly 1 sugar to my father's and a splash of almond milk to Arya's. Details mattered. They always had. In my previous life, I'd been too naive to see how they were using my attentiveness against me. "Let me help you with that," a deep voice offered from behind. I nearly dropped the tray. William Chen, our new head of legal, stood in the doorway. His eyes, intelligent and too observant for comfort, scanned my face. "Thank you, but I've got it," I replied, careful to keep my voice neutral. William was the one variable I hadn't accounted for in this timeline. He hadn't worked for Zhao Investments in my previous life, and his presence unsettled me. Did he suspect something? The boardroom fell silent as I re-entered, all eyes turning to me. For a moment, panic fluttered in my chest. Had someone received the files already? Was I caught? "I was thinking we should discuss the Wang partnership again," I suggested innocently as I set down the tray, knowing it was the one project Isabel had completely neglected. Her face paled slightly, fingers clutching her pen tighter as my father turned his attention to her. The first thread of her carefully woven lies began to unravel. "The Wang partnership?" Isabel's voice hitched slightly. "I don't think that's a priority right now." My father frowned. "The Wangs are one of our most important potential clients. Why wouldn't it be a priority?" I watched the micro-expressions flicker across Isabel's face. Panic, calculation, recovery. She'd mastered the art of thinking on her feet in the years she'd spent manipulating her way up the corporate ladder. "What I meant was, it's already being handled," she recovered smoothly. "I have a meeting scheduled with them next week. It's on my calendar." A blatant lie. Mr. Wang had called yesterday, frustrated that his emails had gone unanswered for weeks. I knew because I'd intentionally routed his messages to my inbox instead of hers. William Chen cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention. "Actually, I received a rather concerning call from Mr. Wang yesterday. Something about repeated cancellations?" The look Isabel shot me could have frozen fire. She knew I'd done something, but couldn't figure out what, not yet. My father's eyes narrowed. "Isabel, is this true?" The conference room suddenly felt like a courtroom with Isabel on trial and me the unseen prosecutor. Arya shifted uncomfortably beside her, always the faithful lieutenant, while Marcus straightened his tie, his nervous tell from as far back as I could remember. "There must be some misunderstanding," Isabel insisted, her knuckles white around her pen. "I'll call Mr. Wang today and clear everything up." My father nodded, but doubt had been planted. I took a small sip of my coffee, hiding my satisfaction behind the rim of the cup. Phase 1 complete. By the time Isabel reached out to Mr. Wang, he would have already received my email detailing exactly how his account had been neglected, along with suggestions for moving forward that would make me indispensable to the partnership. The question now was how long until Isabel realized she was fighting a war on multiple fronts. The charity auction glittered with crystal and wealth, Isabel's hand possessively clutching Marcus's arm as they bid against me for the vintage jade collection, the same collection that had belonged to my mother before mysteriously disappearing after her death. The auctioneer's voice echoed through the marble hall as I deliberately lost the bidding war. "Too bad, May. You always were sentimental about the wrong things," Isabel whispered, victory making her careless as her fingers traced the jade pieces now in her possession. The scent of her stolen perfume mixed with the champagne she'd had too much of. I nodded sadly, excusing myself while secretly sending a text to the reporter I'd tipped off about the stolen family heirlooms. The auction house buzzed with Shanghai's elite, everyone dressed in their finest. I made my way through the crowd, accepting sympathetic glances from those who'd witnessed Isabel's obvious gloating. The single jade pendant around my neck, the one piece I'd managed to recover before my rebirth, felt like a promise against my skin. In exactly 8 hours, the morning news would break a story that would shake the Zhao family to its core. I found a quiet alcove and pulled out my phone, confirming that the authentication papers for the jade collection had been delivered to the Shanghai Daily's investigative reporter. The documents clearly showed my mother's name and ownership records, papers I'd discovered hidden in my father's study during this second chance at life. "Are you all right?" William Chen appeared at my side, his unexpected presence once again disrupting my carefully constructed moment. "That was quite a vicious display from your sister." I composed my features, wondering why he kept showing up at crucial moments. "Stepsister," I corrected automatically. "And I'm fine. It's just jewelry." His eyes, too perceptive, lingered on my pendant. "Is it? That pendant matches the collection she just purchased?" My heart pounded. How much did he know? Who was he really? In my previous life, I'd never met William Chen. His presence in this timeline was an anomaly I couldn't account for, and anomalies were dangerous. "Family heirloom," I explained simply, turning to watch Isabel showing off her new acquisition to a circle of admirers. "My mother left it to me. Yet the rest of the set just happened to appear at auction?" His tone was casual, but his eyes were not. Before I could respond, my father approached, his face tight with controlled anger. "May, we're leaving, now." William stepped back respectfully, but not before giving me a look that clearly said our conversation wasn't over. Another complication I didn't need. In the car, my father's silence was suffocating. The city lights blurred past my window as I waited for the inevitable explosion. 3, 2, 1. "What were you thinking, bidding against your sister like that?" he finally demanded. "Making a scene in front of everyone?" I kept my voice soft, practiced. "I thought you'd be proud of me for showing initiative. Isn't that what you're always telling me to do?" His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Don't be clever. You know those jade pieces have been promised to Isabel in my will." "Funny, I thought they belonged to Mother, and me as her daughter." The words slipped out before I could stop them, sharper than I'd intended. His quick sideways glance was filled with suspicion. This new May, the one who occasionally let the mask slip to reveal steel underneath, unsettled him. "Good. Your mother would have wanted Isabel to have them," he insisted, the lie practiced and familiar. "She always thought of her as a daughter, too." Another lie. My mother had seen through Isabel from the beginning, had warned me about her before she died. Warnings I'd been too young to understand then. But I understood now. What my father didn't know was that in exactly 7 hours, everyone in Shanghai would understand too. Morning headlines blazed with accusations. "Stolen family treasures reappear at charity auction." My father's phone rang incessantly as I prepared breakfast, the sizzle of the pan masking his increasingly desperate explanations. The Jade Collection's authentication papers, with my mother's name clearly listed, had mysteriously appeared on the reporter's desk overnight. I flipped the eggs with practiced precision, listening to my father's voice grow more strained with each call. Isabel stumbled into the kitchen, her face ashen, still wearing last night's clothes. "What have you done?" she hissed, keeping her voice low enough that my father couldn't hear from his study. I slid a plate of perfectly prepared breakfast toward her. "Coffee? You look like you need it." Her hand shot out, knocking the plate to the floor, the ceramic shattered, eggs and toast scattering across the imported tile. "This is your doing somehow, isn't it?" I knelt to clean up the mess, my movements unhurried. "How could it be? I lost the auction, remember? Thanks to you, those jade pieces are now evidence in what sounds like a potential theft investigation." The color drained further from her face. "They'll find nothing. Father will handle it." I smiled up at her, the same smile she'd given me countless times before tearing my life apart. "Perhaps, But mud sticks, doesn't it? Especially in business. The threat of her reputation, the one thing she valued above all else, being tarnished hung between us like a physical presence. The kitchen clock ticked loudly, counting down to the emergency board meeting scheduled for 11 a.m. Someone is trying to ruin us, my father said, his voice hoarse as he entered the kitchen to find Isabel frozen in place while I calmly wiped egg from the floor. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the dust particles dancing above the untouched breakfast feast. I poured more tea, suggesting quietly that perhaps returning the jade collection would help salvage their reputation. My father's face darkened with suspicion. How would you know that? I kept my expression neutral. It's what the reporter on TV just suggested. Voluntary return of disputed artifacts often leads to reduced negative publicity. I gestured toward the kitchen television, which was indeed playing the morning news covering the scandal. The doorbell rang, its cheerful chime incongruous with the tension filling our home. My father straightened his shoulders, preparing to face whatever new crisis awaited. That will be Mr. Zhang from the board, I offered helpfully. I took the liberty of inviting him for breakfast to discuss damage control options. Both Isabel and my father stared at me with identical expressions of shock. In my previous life, I had never taken initiative, never inserted myself into business matters. That May had been content to remain invisible. This May had plans they couldn't begin to comprehend. The real question was, how would they react when they discovered I'd invited not just Mr. Zhang, but the entire board, including representatives from the Wang partnership I'd secretly salvaged after Isabel's neglect? Isabel cornered me in the garden after the impromptu board meeting, the scent of roses surrounding us as her nails dug into my arm. I know you did this somehow, she hissed, her perfect makeup unable to hide the fear in her eyes. Thunder rolled in the distance as I gently removed her hand, my calm demeanor making her even more uncertain. Did what? I'm just trying to help our family avoid scandal, I replied, knowing the board meeting tomorrow would bring even more revelations about her fraudulent market reports. The Wang Partnership celebration dinner shimmered with success that should have been mine. Across the candlelit table, Marcus proposed a toast to Isabel's brilliant negotiation skills, while my father beamed. The crystal chandelier cast fractured rainbows across the white tablecloth as I smiled tightly. The memory stick with the original negotiation recordings heavy in my clutch. Sometimes I wonder how we ever managed without Isabel, my father mused, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening with pride that had never been directed at me. The rich aroma of truffle and aged wine couldn't mask the sour taste of injustice as I excused myself to use the restroom, brushing past Arya, who whispered, "Know your place, May. Always the assistant, never the star." The past month had been a calculated dance. After the Jade collection scandal, I'd strategically helped Isabel restore her reputation, positioning myself as the loyal sister while secretly documenting every fraudulent move she made. Tonight's celebration of the Wang partnership, a deal I had salvaged through anonymous emails and late-night calls, was the perfect stage for the next phase of my plan. In 20 minutes, Mr. Wang would arrive late to the dinner with information that would transform this victory celebration into something quite different. In the privacy of the marble bathroom, I uploaded the recordings to the company server and scheduled an email to the Wang representatives for midnight. After champagne would loosen tongues and defenses. The cold water against my wrists grounded me as I reapplied my lipstick, preparing to return to the celebration of someone else's stolen success. The bathroom door swung open, revealing William Chen. His eyes widened slightly at finding me there. "This is the ladies' room," I pointed out, slipping the memory stick back into my clutch. "And this is the men's," he countered, gesturing to the urinals I'd failed to notice in my distraction. Heat flooded my cheeks, the first genuine emotion I'd displayed in weeks. I must have taken a wrong turn. His eyes dropped to my clutch, then back to my face. Must have. Just like those negotiation recordings must have found their way to Mr. Wang's email by accident. My heart stopped. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping lower. "I've been watching you, May. The way you move through this company like a ghost, always present but never seen. Until recently." The air between us charged with something dangerous, not attraction, though that was there too, but the electricity of two predators recognizing each other. Who was he? What did he want? You should get back to the party, I managed, keeping my voice steady. Your date will be wondering where you are. I don't have a date. His smile held no warmth. I prefer to keep my eyes on the real power in the room. Right now, that's you. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from the restaurant host. Mr. Wang had arrived. Time was up. Excuse me, I murmured, slipping past him, the scent of his cologne lingering as our shoulders brushed. Another complication, another variable, but not one that would derail tonight's plans. Mr. Wang approached me as I returned to the table, his voice low and curious. Miss Zhao, I was under the impression you led the initial negotiations? Your insights about our manufacturing processes were remarkably astute. The sudden silence from our table was deafening as all eyes turned to us. Isabel's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. The look of panic that flashed across Isabel's face was worth every humiliation she had ever inflicted on me. Her eyes darted to Marcus, then my father, silently pleading for intervention. There must be some confusion, my father intervened, his hand protectively on Isabel's shoulder. The tension crackled like static electricity as I simply smiled, suggesting that perhaps Mr. Wang had seen my preliminary research notes. Isabel developed them into something truly viable, I added graciously, knowing that by morning the Wangs would have proof of exactly who had conducted every negotiation meeting. How strange, Mr. Wang continued, pulling out his phone. Because I received these audio recordings just moments ago. They sound remarkably like your voice, Miss May, discussing contract points that Miss Isabel claimed credit for tonight. The color drained from Isabel's face so rapidly I feared she might faint. My father's jaw clenched, a muscle twitching in his cheek. From across the room, I caught William Chen's gaze, knowing, almost amused. Perhaps we should discuss this in private, my father suggested, his voice strained. Mr. Wang shook his head. I see no need. I'm simply giving credit where it's due. Your daughter May salvaged this partnership after weeks of neglect. Our board was prepared to walk away until she reached out. Arya's sharp intake of breath matched the widening of Marcus's eyes. The illusion of Isabel's competence was shattering in real time, and everyone at the table knew it. Is this true? My father demanded, turning to me with an expression I'd never seen before. Confusion, betrayal, and something that looked almost like respect. I met his gaze calmly. I thought families supported each other. Isn't that what you've always told me? The question hung in the air, laden with implications. Beside him, Isabel's fingers clutched her napkin so tightly, her knuckles turned white. Her empire of lies was beginning to crumble, and we both knew it would only take a gentle push to bring it all down. The question was, who would give that push and when? The corporate gala's glittering lights couldn't hide the strain on my father's face as he pulled me into his office adjacent to the ballroom. The board is calling for an emergency meeting. The Wangs are threatening to pull out. What do you know about this? The bass from the music vibrated through the walls as I maintained my innocent expression, the jade pendant warm against my skin. 2 weeks had passed since the dinner disaster. Isabel had managed to partially recover, spinning a tale about mentoring me and allowing me to handle some aspects of the Wang negotiations. My father had accepted this explanation publicly, but the doubt had been planted. The careful hierarchy of the Zhao family was shifting, and everyone could feel it. I'm not sure what you want me to say, Father, I replied, straightening the sleeve of my midnight blue gown. The Wang seemed dissatisfied with some aspects of the contract. Perhaps Isabel should speak with them? The vein in his temple pulsed dangerously. Isabel claims you've been interfering with her communications, redirecting emails. Is this true? Outside, the party continued in full swing. I could hear Isabel's artificial laughter floating through the door, maintaining appearances while her world slowly unraveled. In 10 minutes, the clock would strike midnight and the final piece of my plan would fall into place. That sounds rather technical for me, don't you think? I countered, allowing a note of the old meek May to color my voice. You've always said I lack Isabel's business acumen. His eyes narrowed, searching my face for the truth he sensed, but couldn't quite grasp. You've changed, he finally said. Since when did you become so calculating? Since I died and came back with the memory of every betrayal carved into my soul, I thought but didn't say. Instead, I met his gaze steadily. People grow up, Father. Sometimes they even grow stronger. A knock at the door interrupted us. William Chen stood in the doorway, his expression grave. Mr. Zhao, your presence is requested in the main hall. It's urgent. My father hesitated, looking between William and me with suspicion. This isn't finished, he warned before striding out, leaving us alone in his office. William closed the door, leaning against it with his arms crossed. You're playing a dangerous game, May. I don't know what you mean, I replied automatically, moving to follow my father. I think you do. He didn't move from the door. The redirected emails, the leaked recordings, the strategically timed revelations about the Jade collection. Someone would need extraordinary foresight to orchestrate all that. My pulse quickened. Was he accusing me of something specific or just fishing for information? Or perhaps Isabel simply isn't as clever as everyone thinks. Perhaps, he agreed, his eyes never leaving my face. Or perhaps someone knows exactly how events will unfold because they've seen them before. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Impossible. No one could know about my rebirth. It was a secret locked inside my own consciousness. A miracle or curse I still didn't fully understand myself. That's absurd, I whispered, but my voice lacked conviction. A commotion erupted from the main hall, raised voices, gasps, the unmistakable sound of glass shattering. William checked his watch. Right on schedule, he murmured. You might want to be out there for this part. Who was this man, and how did he seem to know what was coming? Perhaps it's time you knew the truth, Father, I said, removing the pendant and revealing the hidden compartment containing a small key. The scent of old books filled the air as I unlocked the antique desk in the corner, my mother's desk that had been relegated to storage until I secretly had it restored to this office. The chaos in the ballroom had reached a crescendo. I could hear my name being called, but it didn't matter now. Let them wait. Let them all wait while I finally revealed what I'd discovered after my rebirth. William stood silently, watching as I retrieved the leather portfolio hidden in the desk's secret compartment. My mother had shown me this hiding place when I was a child, a memory I'd forgotten until I lived this life a second time. How did you know about this? My father demanded, bursting back into the office, his face ashen. Isabel trailed behind him, mascara streaking her cheeks. Whatever had happened in the ballroom had shattered her careful composure. I ignored the question, instead placing the portfolio on the desk between us. Do you recognize this, Father? His eyes widened with recognition, then fear. Well, where did you get that? Mother's desk. The one you had removed from the office after she died. I opened it slowly, revealing the documents that had taken me months to locate in this second life. The desk that now sits in my apartment, where it belongs. Inside lay my mother's will, the real one, naming me the majority shareholder of Zhao Investments upon my 25th birthday, which had passed 3 months ago. Mother never trusted Isabel or her influence over you, I explained, watching the color drain from his face as he recognized the authenticated seal and signatures. Outside, the party continued unaware that the company hierarchy had just been irrevocably altered. It can't be, Isabel whispered, reaching for the documents. I pulled them back out of her grasp. Don't touch what isn't yours, I said quietly. You've done enough of that over the years. My father sank into his chair, aged years and moments. This can't be real. We executed Lynn's will years ago. Impossible, he whispered, fingers trembling as they traced my mother's handwriting. The distant clinking of glasses and forced laughter formed a surreal backdrop to his world collapsing. The will we executed gave controlling interest to me with Isabel as successor. A forgery, I replied calmly, producing a second document, a report from the private investigator I'd hired after my rebirth, complete with testimony from the lawyer who had been pressured to create the false will. And that's not all I've discovered since coming back. The words slipped out before I could stop them, but it didn't matter now. The thunderstruck expression on his face told me he was too shocked by the revelations to notice my momentary lapse. From the doorway, William made a small sound, part warning, part interest. I glanced up, meeting his eyes. There was no surprise there, only confirmation. Somehow he knew. Somehow he had always known. "What happens now?" my father asked, his voice hollow. I closed the portfolio carefully. "Now we go back to the party. Tomorrow we meet with the lawyers, and then—" I looked directly at Isabel, whose face had transformed from shock to calculation, already planning her next move. "We start correcting all the wrongs that have been done." "You can't do this," Isabel hissed, desperation making her reckless. "No one will believe you. I've built relationships with the board, the investors." "Relationships built on lies," I replied evenly. "And as for proof," I reached into the desk drawer and withdrew a USB drive. "I have years of documentation, financial irregularities, misattributed work, even evidence of how the jade collection disappeared from Mother's possession after her death." Marcus appeared in the doorway, breathless. "What's going on? Everyone's talking about some announcement." His voice died as he took in the scene. My father defeated, Isabel panicking, William watchful, and me standing behind the desk like I belonged there. "Perfect timing," I said, smiling at my former fiancé. "We were just discussing the future of Zhao Investments. Your services won't be needed going forward." His mouth opened and closed soundlessly, looking to Isabel for explanation or support. For the first time in either of my lives, she had none to give. A clock somewhere chimed midnight. My 25th birthday had officially ended. My inheritance, my birthright, was now legally mine. The beginning of the end for those who had betrayed me was finally here. But as I looked at William's knowing eyes, I wondered, what did he know about my rebirth? And more importantly, why had he let my plan unfold without interference? The boardroom felt cavernous despite being filled with every major player in my life's drama. Morning light slanted through the blinds, creating prison bar shadows across Isabel's tear-streaked face and my father's ashen one. The leather chair creaked as I settled into the CEO position for the first time. The articles of removal spread before them all. 1 week had passed since the gala revelation. 7 days of legal meetings, document verifications, and whispered conversations throughout the company. The board had convened an emergency session yesterday, reviewing the evidence I'd methodically collected over the months since my rebirth. Their verdict had been unanimous. "Before we begin," I said, my voice steady in the oppressive silence, "I want to thank you all for coming." Across the table, Isabel's perfectly manicured nails tapped an anxious rhythm against her water glass. Beside her, Marcus slouched in his chair, his usual confident demeanor deflated by the reality that his meal ticket was being revoked. My father sat rigidly beside our company lawyer, who had advised him to say nothing during this meeting. Only William seemed at ease, observing from the corner with that same enigmatic expression he'd worn since appearing in my life. "This is ridiculous," Arya finally burst out, unable to contain herself any longer. "You can't possibly expect to run this company. You've been nothing but a glorified assistant for years." "An assistant who apparently did most of the work while others took the credit," I countered, sliding folders toward each of them. Page 3 details the Wang partnership contributions. Page 7 shows the Kaiser merger analysis. All my work, all claimed by Isabel. The evidence was damning. Emails, timestamps, original documents with my digital signature before they were modified. Months of careful documentation had created an ironclad case. But would it be enough to break through years of their self-delusion? "You can't do this to your own family," my father pleaded, his voice unfamiliar in its humility. The scent of his stress-induced sweat mingled with Isabel's excessive perfume, creating a cloying atmosphere. Marcus stood by the door, his escape route blocked by security, his usual confident posture now deflated. I studied my father's face, truly looked at him for perhaps the first time since my rebirth. The proud, domineering man who had shaped my insecurities, who had consistently chosen Isabel over me, who had allowed my mother's memory to be tarnished, now reduced to begging. In my previous life, I would have crumbled at the first sign of his disapproval. Now, I felt nothing but a cold clarity. Family? I repeated, the word tasting foreign on my tongue. Was it family when you forged Mother's will? When you gave Isabel the position that was rightfully mine? When you stood by and watched as Marcus proposed to me while sleeping with my stepsister? Isabel flinched at the last accusation, while Marcus paled. That particular betrayal had been carefully hidden in both timelines until now. How did you? Marcus began, then stopped abruptly. No, I finished for him. I've always known, in this life and the last. The strange comment hung in the air, unexamined by most, though William's eyes narrowed fractionally. Another slip. I was becoming careless, but perhaps it no longer mattered. Perhaps nothing mattered except finishing what I'd started. Arya pushed forward a handwritten apology, along with proof she'd resigned from her executive position. We made mistakes, May. Terrible ones. But we can fix this together, like we used to when we were children. The central air conditioning hummed softly, underlining the silence that followed her desperate appeal. My former best friend, the girl who had held my hand through my mother's funeral, then later held Isabel's secrets while they systematically dismantled my confidence and stole my work. In my previous life, her betrayal had been perhaps the most painful of all. What exactly do you think we can fix, Arya? I asked quietly. The years of gaslighting, the stolen work, the nights you comforted me while knowing Marcus was with Isabel? She shrank back, unable to meet my eyes. The truth had always been her weakness, facing it directly, owning her part in it. May, please, Isabel spoke up, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. We're sisters, not by blood, but we grew up together. Whatever mistakes I've made, whatever hurt I've caused, I'm sorry, truly sorry. If I hadn't lived through this before, hadn't experienced her false apologies and subsequent betrayals, I might have wavered. The tears swimming in her eyes looked genuine. The tremor in her hand as she reached for mine seemed real. But I had died with the taste of Isabel's betrayal on my lips. The pills I'd swallowed that night had been my final surrender to her machinations. My rebirth had given me one gift above all others, the ability to see through her lies. How many more lives would she destroy if I relented now? I let the moments stretch, remembering my previous life, the betrayals, the gaslighting, the night I had taken too many pills after discovering Marcus and Isabel together in my own bed. The sharp memory of waking up 17 again with a second chance and the bitter knowledge of what was to come. My fingers traced the jade pendant as I finally spoke. No. The simple word echoed with finality. You will all resign today with the severance packages I've outlined. You'll find them more than fair, certainly fairer than you ever were to me. No satisfaction colored my tone, just calm certainty. As they gathered their belongings, shoulders slumped in defeat, I felt not triumph, but release. Like a long-held breath finally exhaled. This isn't over, Isabel whispered as she passed me, a final attempt at intimidation. I smiled, genuinely. It is for you. The boardroom emptied slowly. My father, the last to leave, pausing at the door with a lifetime of unsaid words between us. For a moment, I thought he might apologize. Might finally acknowledge the damage he'd done. Instead, he simply nodded once, accepting defeat, and walked away. Only William remained, watching me from his position by the window. Impressive, he said quietly, though perhaps a bit theatrical at the end. You're still here, I observed, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was fading, leaving hollowness in its wake. Why? He approached the table, taking the seat directly across from me. Because you and I need to talk, May. About your rebirth. My heart stopped. There it was, spoken plainly, the impossible knowledge he shouldn't possess. I don't know what you're talking about, I managed, clinging to denial. Don't you? He leaned forward, eyes intent. The careful planning, the perfect foresight, the occasional slips when you reference this life or last time. You've been given a second chance, and you've used it brilliantly. Panic rose in my throat. That's absurd. Time travel? Rebirth? You sound delusional. Not time travel, he corrected. and not delusion. I recognize the signs because I've seen them before. He paused, his next words changing everything. Because I've lived them myself. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as the impossible truth dawned. I wasn't alone. There were others who had experienced rebirth, others like William. But if he had been reborn too, what was his purpose here? What game was he playing in my carefully reconstructed life? 1 year later, I stood on the balcony of my Santorini villa, the Aegean Sea stretching endlessly before me. The salty breeze caressed my face as I sipped morning coffee, business tablets set aside after approving the latest quarterly reports. Zhao Investments had flourished under my leadership, expanding into sustainable technologies that would have made my mother proud. The conversation with William that day in the boardroom had changed everything. Another rebirth survivor, though he'd been through the cycle 3 times to my single experience. We weren't unique, he'd explained. Rare but not alone. Some cosmic hiccup, some twist of fate or karma that offered selected souls a second chance. Most waste it, he'd told me over dinner that night after everyone else had been dismissed. They either try to relive their happiest moments or become obsessed with revenge. Like me, I'd acknowledged, the truth of my motivations laid bare. At first, he'd agreed, but you've already moved beyond simple vengeance. You're rebuilding, creating something new. That's why I didn't interfere. The revelation that I wasn't alone in this impossible experience had been both comforting and unsettling. William had become my guide, my confidant, and eventually something more. Not a romance. We were both too scarred, too wary for that, but a partnership built on shared understanding of our unique perspective on life. The tablet chimed with an incoming video call, pulling me from my memories. William's face appeared on the screen, Shanghai's skyline visible behind him. The Chen merger is complete, he reported, satisfaction evident in his voice. The board is unanimously pleased. How's your sabbatical? I turned the tablet to show him the panoramic view. See for yourself. Worth every minute away from the office. His smile softened. You've earned it, May. 6 months of 14-hour days turned the company around. Even your father admitted it to the shareholders last week. A small flutter of satisfaction, quickly dismissed. My father's approval no longer held the power it once did. And the foundation? The Lin Zhao Foundation's first scholarship recipients have been selected. 20 young women from underprivileged backgrounds, all with full rides to business school. My mother's legacy, the one Isabel and my father had tried to erase, now permanently enshrined in a foundation that would outlive us all, another piece of justice, quietly served. What would the old May think of me now? The fragile girl who had once been so desperate for approval that she'd swallowed pills rather than face rejection. Would she recognize herself in the woman I'd become? The local market beckoned with its vibrant colors and aromatic spices. I wandered through the stalls, bargaining playfully in my improving Greek, purchasing fresh ingredients for the dinner I would prepare myself. No servants, no assistants. Just the satisfaction of creating something with my own hands. The sun warmed my shoulders as I selected ripe tomatoes and fresh fish. The vendor's weathered smile reminding me how simple human connections could be when not tainted by ambition and jealousy. Calimera, May, called Elena, the elderly woman who ran the vegetable stand. Special tomatoes today from my son's garden. I smiled, accepting her offerings and complimenting them in my halting Greek. This simple interaction, genuine, without agenda, was something I'd rarely experienced in either of my lives until now. The village had accepted me without question when I arrived 6 weeks ago. No one here knew of Zhao Investments or cared about corporate takeovers. I was simply the quiet Chinese woman who had rented the villa on the cliff, who painted sometimes and was learning to cook Greek food. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A news alert about Zhao Investments' stock price reaching another record high. The business world continued to marvel at the company's transformation under my leadership. What they didn't know was that the true transformation had been personal. Occasionally, news reached me of my former life. Isabel working entry-level positions at competing firms. My father retired to a modest home. Marcus's failed attempt to marry into another wealthy family. I filed these updates away without dwelling on them, preferring to focus on the charitable foundation I'd established in my mother's name. The settlement I'd offered them had been fair, more than fair, given their betrayals. Enough money to live comfortably, but not enough to maintain their excessive lifestyles. The jade collection had been donated to the National Museum, with my mother's name prominently displayed as the original owner. Her story, her true story, preserved for posterity. Back at the villa, I arranged my market purchases on the kitchen counter, taking pleasure in the simple task of meal preparation. In my previous life, I'd never cooked, relying on takeout or company meals. Now, I found an unexpected joy in the methodical chopping, sautéing, and seasoning. William had been right about rebirth survivors. The successful ones moved beyond their initial motivations, whether revenge or reliving glory days, to build something entirely new, something unexpected. The evening brought a video call from Mr. Wang, now both business partner and mentor. "You should consider visiting the Shanghai office soon," he suggested, his respect evident even through the digital connection. The sunset painted my white walls in shades of orange and pink as I promised to consider it, knowing I was finally ready to return to China on my own terms. "The Guangzhou Sustainable Energy Initiative is generating significant interest," he continued. "Investors are asking when you'll return to take the helm for the next phase." I watched the sun sink lower over the Aegean, considering his words. The company no longer defined me, but it remained a powerful tool for creating the change I wanted to see in the world. Unlike Isabel, who had seen power only as a means for personal gain, I understood its true potential. Another month, I decided. There's still something I need to find here. What I didn't tell him was that I was searching for peace. Not just the temporary tranquility of a vacation, but a lasting inner calm that neither of my lives had previously allowed. The kind of peace that came from knowing exactly who you were and what you wanted. "Take your time," Mr. Wang replied wisely. "The company is stable. Your leadership team is strong." After we disconnected, I carried my simple dinner to the terrace, savoring both the fresh flavors and the view. In the distance, fishing boats returned to harbor, their lights twinkling like earthbound stars against the darkening sea. William had asked me once during those early days of revelation what I thought the purpose of rebirth might be. Was it random chance, divine intervention, a cosmic error? "Does it matter?" I'd countered. "We're here, we remember. The only question worth asking is what we do with it." He'd smiled that knowing smile. "And what will you do with it, Mei Zhao?" The answer had come easily, surprising even myself. Create something that outlasts me. As night fell, I lit candles on my terrace and dined alone but not lonely, savoring both the meal I'd prepared and the peace I'd fought so hard to achieve. Stars emerged above the darkened sea, reflecting in the water like scattered diamonds. The crimson dress from that fateful night hung in my closet, a reminder not of revenge but of rebirth. I had no need to wear it again. Its purpose, like my journey back to myself, was beautifully, completely fulfilled. Tomorrow I would paint again. Another new skill I was cultivating in this second chance at life. Perhaps I would finally capture the perfect blue of the Aegean meeting the sky, a color that reminded me of possibilities rather than limitations. My tablet chimed with one final message for the day. A photo from William of the Lin Zhao Foundation's first scholarship ceremony. 20 young women, their faces bright with promise and determination, standing beneath my mother's portrait. This, then, was the truth of rebirth, not merely a chance to correct past wrongs, but an opportunity to create something that never existed before. Not just revenge, but renewal. Not just justice, but joy. I raised my glass to the stars, to whatever cosmic force had granted me this second chance, and most of all to the woman I had become, stronger, wiser, and finally, genuinely free. The jade pendant rested in its velvet box on my bedside table, no longer needed as a talisman of revenge or reminder of betrayal. In its place around my neck hung a simple silver pendant in the shape of a phoenix, William's parting gift before I left for Greece. "For the woman who rose from her own ashes," he'd said simply, "rising from ashes, creating from destruction. building a future unbound by the limitations of the past. That was rebirth in its truest form. Not the supernatural miracle of awakening in a younger body with memories intact, but the daily choice to become something new, something better than you were before. I closed my eyes, breathing in the fragrant Mediterranean night air, completely at peace with where I had been and where I was going. This time I would live,